Claire Obscura Expedition 33 is a game I was instantly excited for when I first saw the reveal trailer last year. Between the more mature approach to its art direction and story setup, alongside a flashy looking turn-based reactive combat system that reminded me of games like Super Mario RPG and Legend of Dragoon, I had a strong feeling this game had the potential to be something special, which after sinking over 80 hours into the game, it's so much better than I even imagined it could be, because while you can see the DNA of the various games Expedition 33 takes inspirations from, which it proudly wears on its sleeves, I believe the game does enough in the tweaking of those inspirations to make it truly stand alongside some of the all-time greats. But before I really jump into everything I love and dislike about the game, there will be spoilers in this video about different plot points, enemies, and areas throughout the game, so if you don't want to be spoiled on anything, this is your warning. Now with that said, it's time I dived into Expedition 33, starting with what might have been one of the most surprising aspects of the game to me, the level design. Now, level design is one of those aspects I believe so many turn-based RPGs outside of a few just don't do very well, because the way you move through the world is pretty one-dimensional, and since you usually fight enemies in a separate instance when entering a battle, there's really no reason to get crazy with the level design, since ultimately it could be viewed as a waste of development time and resources. But Expedition 33 handles that problem in a simple but effective way, despite how linear its general level design is, which is done by creating endless branching paths that reward the player with items, lore, and optional boss fights. And when I say branching paths, at times they obscure these paths really well. I don't know how many times I overlooked a small path or area just because of how it blended into the environment, which the game does a good job of teaching you early that you should be paying attention to what's around you and not just what's in front of you. For example, the opening area of the game is almost set up like a funnel where it's pushing you to the harbor. But if you resist that urge and explore around, there's so much to find, and this carries through the entire game. It's like each area has a giant focal point that draws your gaze in, almost like it's trying to mislead you away from all the cool stuff you can find. Now, I'm not trying to say this is some revolutionary thing they are doing here, it's just what they do and how they do it. It's just done really well for this kind of game, and the best part about this is it carries to the overworld map as well. I wasn't sure what to expect from the overworld map. I figured it would act as a fun transition between areas with some hidden or out of reach locations that I would be accessing later on as I gain more abilities for the also lovable SK to explore more of it. But there's so much more to it than that. Outside of new locations to find, in the actual overworld, they have hidden bosses, various items, and so much more, to the point where, just like when exploring the linear areas, you need to be looking over every little corner of this world because you never know what you might find. There's so much content in this overworld, it's crazy, and honestly, because of the approach to the art direction, it makes you want to see what's around every corner, since each area feels so different from one another. Some areas have these beautiful fixed camera shots, some areas have unique challenges or side quests, other areas are massive that have additional cutscenes and build upon the story. Basically, there was never a point where I felt like I was wasting my time by exploring the world because the rewards were always worth the effort. Though that doesn't mean I didn't have any issues with how exploration was handled. In fact, there's one aspect of it that I feel they kind of fumbled on in execution, which is the point where you gain the ability to fly, so you finally have access to fully explore the entire world without restrictions. This happens right before the final battle, so you basically have the option to go exploring and do optional content, or go to the final boss and finish the game. Now, on a first blind playthrough, you have no idea what the devs are planning for an ending. You don't know if optional content will affect the ending, you don't know if you finish the game, that's it, you can't go back to do optional stuff afterwards, you just don't know what to expect. So I imagine a lot of people will have the same experience I had, where they go do most of the optional content before heading to the final boss because the game is so damn fun, and find themselves massively over leveled, so you have to purposely nerf yourself as much as possible to enjoy the final area of the game, since that area feels scaled to where you would be when you get the ability to fly. So realistically, you should head straight there before doing any optional content, which likely if you have beat the final boss, you would know that you are free to run around the world and still do optional content after loading in. Though it does make me wonder why they didn't just make the transition from Act 2 to Act 3 one continuous push for players before allowing them to explore the world just from a balancing perspective. Though at the same time, a lot of the optional content feels important to the story to the point where it feels it should be done before facing the final boss, it would almost feel awkward doing after seeing the ending. I know this might seem like a dumb complaint, but it just seemed like a lot of weird design choices were made for Act 3, and at the very least, it would have been nice if the final area scaled to your characters. Though, like I mentioned, you can nerf yourself down pretty easily thanks to a leveling and gearing system that makes this easily one of the most flexible and customizable RPGs I've ever played, which complements a combat system that is easily the best turn-based combat system I've experienced. I say this because when it comes to a lot of turn-based RPGs, there comes a point where I find myself almost turning my brain off once I reach a certain level of understanding of the game's mechanics, and it leads me to basically disengaging from the game I'm playing. I know what abilities I'm going to use. I know some kind of attack will be coming my way from the enemy I'm fighting that I will either be prepared for or not thanks to the unpredictability of the RNG I may be facing, which there are times where in these RPGs where you just accept your fate and wait for the final shot to take you down because you know you are done for, and there's nothing you can do about it, which I don't dislike necessarily. I love turn-based RPGs. I love the tactfulness of taking time to plan out 2 or 3 moves ahead and trying to be prepared for the RNG that may be coming my way, or depending on the game, making an enemy react to what I'm doing so I can exploit them. But there's something about how Expedition 33's turn-based combat gives you that shot of adrenaline with almost a last stand mentality that I love, since no matter how dire a situation the game may look, you always have a fighting chance, which thanks to playing through the game on expert mode, I constantly found myself in those kind of situations. But how does it do this exactly? Well, it does this through a very involved system that asks you as a player to truly engage with every part of the combat that goes beyond just choosing commands. Basically, as you progress through the main story, you will get introduced to mechanics that will have you dodging, parrying, and jumping enemy attacks that come your way. But as a player, you can't solely fall back on any one of these in every encounter, since different enemy attacks throughout the game will require you to engage with all of these mechanics. So starting with normal enemy attacks, these can be dodged or parried. Dodging is the much more forgiving option of the two, and will also give you 2 different indications on how well you dodged an attack. When it says dodged, you use the maximum window allowed to avoid an attack, but when it says perfect, that means you dodge in the same window a parry can be performed. So the game does a good job teaching you the timing of parries without the risk of going for them, which I really enjoyed, since in various fights, once I knew I had the timing down, transitioning to using only parries and getting the benefits of being successful at them felt so satisfying. But you don't always get the benefit of using dodges to get the timing down, since later on in the game, you get introduced to gradient attacks, which when an enemy uses these, they have to be parried, and failing to parry them can be absolutely devastating. Which you know when one of these are coming, since the entire screen will turn black and white, indicating one is coming, which is a clever way to use the theme of the game in art direction and combat. But moving on from there, finally, you have attacks that could only be jumped where parries and dodges are not allowed. Now these attacks are fairly forgiving in their timing, I'd say even more so than dodging, but when they are thrown into a combo, it can catch you off guard. At least it did me a few times, but if you do successfully jump an attack, you get the ability to land a jump counter attack that when pulled off during an enemy combo attack, it really feels so good. Almost like you are getting the best of an enemy in this dance of death. With that said, this doesn't just apply to the defensive side of things. The offensive side is also engaging in its own way thanks to its mechanics that ask for just as much of your attention. So just like any other turn-based RPG, you have a variety of actions you can choose from, like using items, basic attacks, and choosing a skill to perform, but each have their own little mechanics to them that add some depth to them. Starting with items, there are only 4 different kinds. The first 3 are known as tints, which are used in battles, which are healing, strong energy, and revive. These are pretty self-explanatory. They heal, restore action points, and revive characters. Then you have your chroma elixirs, which is used outside of battle to fully heal your party. All of these items can be upgraded by finding items to increase your charges of each. Simple but fun system that doesn't bloat the game with endless unnecessary items. Next, jumping over to basic attacks, these can earn you action points, which while I'm mentioning it, so can parries, which is also why they are so important to master, since you can rack up action points with parries during an enemy's turn instead of wasting your turn using a basic attack to do so, which these action points are very important since they are used to unleash your skills, which have a variety of mechanics depending on the character, but all characters share one thing across skills, which is when using a skill, you will be asked to perform a series of quick time events where if you hit them at the correct time in a small window, you will get a perfect, which allows you to get bonuses such as bonus damage from attacking skills, or allow you to buff your entire party instead of an individual character with supporting skills. I know not everyone loves this, but I really enjoy these kind of mechanics in turn-based combat since it keeps you engaged in the combat, though the game does allow you to turn these off specifically so you don't have to engage with them if you don't want to, which I have no problem with. Though as someone who does love them, I do wish there was a little more variety in the buttons in these quick time events, so instead of pressing A 3 times, I'm pressing X, B, and A while using a skill. Not a huge deal, but just something that would have been nice having. But now to build off of that point, you also have special gradient attacks your party members can use just like enemies that have a variety of effects. Which to use a gradient attack, you have to fill the gradient bar by casting skills of any kind, which based on how many action points a skill requires will determine how much of the gradient bar will fill up. Then depending on the bar level, which goes up to 3, will determine how many and or what level of gradient attacks you can use. So basically, you could use 3 level 1 gradient attacks, or you could use a single level 3 gradient attack. So there's a lot of choices that can be made with this system. Definitely when you factor in using gradient attacks at the start of a character's turn, it allows them to still perform another action afterwards. So there's a lot of options to what appears to be a simple battle system. But of course, it doesn't end here, because there is another mechanic I haven't mentioned yet, which is the free aim mechanic. How this works is during your turn, you can enter into what is basically a third-person aiming mode where you can aim and fire on enemy weak points at the cost of action points to not only deal bonus damage, but interrupt their attacks or even effects they may have on your characters. Also, performing a free aim attack doesn't use up a character's turn, so you could fire off a shot, use a gradient attack, fire off a couple more shots, and then end a turn with a basic attack. Basically, it's really cool how you're able to weave this into your character's turns. Though while I'm on the subject of characters, each character in your party has their own unique mechanics that makes their approach to combat feel truly different from one another, and it's also why I said depending on the character you will be dealing with a variety of mechanics when using their skills. Mael swaps between stances based on what skill she uses, which these stances can boost her attacks or defenses. Lune can get up to 4 elemental stains based on the attack she uses, so a fire attack will get her a fire stain, which these stains can then be used to boost or give bonus effects to her other skills. Verso has a style meter, which depending on how high the style meter is, he will get bonus effects with different skills. Minoko steals the feet of the enemies he defeats in battles, which allows him to use their abilities, not to mention each ability rotates a wheel of masks, that if the mask matches the ability's mask, the ability gets a bonus effect. Ciel uses a card system, where she builds sun and moon charges to enter this twilight state for bonuses. Then finally, you have Gustav, who builds up an overcharge meter, which allows him to unleash devastating attacks. These mechanics make learning each character and experimenting with different party combinations so much fun. But what makes experimenting with these characters truly interesting is the system around them that lets you get creative with your builds in ways you couldn't even begin to imagine just at a glance. But let's start with the basics of building out your characters before we dive into the crazy stuff. Like any RPG, as you defeat enemies, your characters will get two kinds of points. Skill points, which you get one per level up, which can be spent on various skills in a skill tree for characters, which at max level you will have enough skill points to unlock all skills for a character minus Minoko, since all of his skills are earned through defeating enemies and collecting their feet like I mentioned earlier. Then you have attribute points, which you earn 3 per level up that can be used to raise one of the 5 stats available to a character: vitality, might, agility, defense, and luck. But what's interesting about the leveling process and building out your characters is how weapons complement the choices you make. Each character has a huge variety of weapons they can earn, which each weapon can have up to 3 active passives based on what level it is, and these levels can be raised by using upgrade materials or by defeating enemies which have a chance to drop higher leveled versions of that weapon. But going back to those weapon passives I mentioned, they can drastically affect how you approach battles. Using Lune as an example, she has a weapon that automatically gives her 2 elemental stains if she has none at the start of her turn, which opens up bonuses for so many of her other skills right away. Then another example is Verso has a weapon where he can use his base attack without using up his turn, which allows him to build up his style meter and action points to open up more options he normally wouldn't have. So as you can see, these few examples show how weapons can give more flexibility to characters without wasting a turn. Then also, depending on what weapon you have equipped, it will scale with 2 attributes, which means putting points into those attributes will give greater benefits to your character, like more damage, health, and defense. Overall, it's a fun system to play around with and allows you to experiment. But there's still one more thing that really ties everything I mentioned together, which is the Pictos system, and where you can truly get crazy with your builds. So Pictos provide a wide variety of effects to characters and can be found all over the place, like through defeating enemies and even just laying around. But how these work is basically characters can equip up to 3 main Pictos at a time, which when equipping them this way, they not only provide a special passive ability, like getting bonus action points when landing parries at the risk of taking more damage, but each Picto equipped this way also provides buffs to 2 of your main stats, like bonus health and defense. Though there is one other thing equipping them this way does. After winning so many battles, you unlock that passive ability without the stat buffs for all characters. Basically, what this means is after equipping your 3 main Pictos, which get you your stat buffs and passives, you can then also equip extra passives without the stat buffs based on how many Lumina points your characters has, which, like a lot of other things, you get more Luminous points through leveling and fighting items. But thanks to this system, you get to the point where you could have 50 passes equipped on one character, and basically be an unstoppable god that one-shots everything, a defensive tank that just can't die. You could purposely turn your team into a walking bomb that kills everything on their deaths. You can even permanently stun enemies so they can't move by breaking them constantly, which is a mechanic I haven't even mentioned yet. All enemies have a break bar that once it's filled by using moves that do break damage, you can then use a move that breaks that bar and stuns an enemy so they can't move. But yeah, the build variety is wild thanks to all of these different mechanics working together, so what could possibly be wrong with this battle system? Well, while I believe this is the best turn-based combat system we have seen in any game, there is one flaw to it. Remember when I said this game gives you that last stand mentality more than any other game? That's because if you're good enough, you can avoid all damage if your dodges, parries, and jumping are on point, which, like I said, feels so damn good when you have one party member left standing and pull off a clutch victory against a tough boss, where in a lot of other RPGs, you already know you're done for. But because of this, all of that rambling I just did over the various mechanics of the game could be realistically completely ignored if you are good enough, and while later on in the game it would do you well to not ignore all those mechanics, since the damage you will be doing will be next to nothing, I would have liked to have seen more enemies use unavoidable status effects. That way, there would have been more planning going into battles. Like, it's great this enemy can freeze me, but if I always dodge the freeze attack, I don't have to ever worry about it. So it would have been cool to see more stuff like, If you're fighting a really strong fire enemy, the game said something like your party can't stand the heat and begins to burn. Just something to make status effects a bigger part of the gameplay would have been nice. Though this is a very strong nitpick because the enemy variety is absolutely off the charts. I can't remember the last time I was this in awe of exploring and seeing what enemies were around each corner, because even when they do the one thing I dislike most in RPGs, reusing regular enemies as bosses or bringing back bosses in other fights, it's done so well I don't really care for once, which these fights usually have a little twist to them or have a strong reward that makes them worth seeking out, like how defeating mimes give you new outfits or hairstyles for characters. Plus, like I said, the enemy variety is massive in this game with some of the most unique optional bosses that really do force you to plan out your moves or you will absolutely lose to them. Like the sapling in the crushing cavern that shields itself and tries to inflict your party with exhaust so you can't gain action points, which you only have so many turns to defeat him before you get crushed by the walls. Or something simple like one of the side quests where you have to dodge the red attacks but let the green ones hit you. Stuff like this is why I said exploring can be so damn fun in this game. Not to mention, because of the art direction, you don't really know what enemies will be like since it's so unpredictable what you might run into. It's not like you're fighting giant dogs or dragons, you're fighting things called Nevrons that don't really follow your standard RPG blueprint on enemy design, which is also what helps elevates the dodging and parry systems, since each Nevron's design affects how they approach battle, and learning their patterns similar to a Dark Souls boss fight or hunting a monster in Monster Hunter truly feels awesome. But the game isn't all about combat. There is a story, and it's a story that really drives all of this forward thanks to how unique of a concept it is and how well the attention to detail around that story builds on it. So the basis of the story is simple. Every year, a giant slumbering paintress awakens to paint a number that gets lower every year, indicating anyone who is that age or above that age disappears into nothingness, which I'm glad I don't live in this world because I would be screwed. Anyways, so expeditions that consist of people who usually only have 1 year left to live get sent out to try and stop the paintress from painting death. This is a really cool concept because it's not your usual RPG bad guy trying to take over the world or search for ultimate power. It's just, here is your target, you don't know why she does what she does, all you know is you need to stop her, and having her presence always in front of you as you're making your way through the various areas of the game gives off such an ominous presence. Then while making your way to her, you're constantly finding journals and clues left behind by other expeditions that have failed, helping you piece together not only what happened to them, but what happened to this world around you. And it's a powerful way to tell a story, like seeing a bridge of dead expeditioners and then finding the journal saying they used their last dying breaths to form that bridge to help those who come after is so cool. Because that's what the meaning is behind the expeditions. It's about laying the groundwork for those who come after, and I think this scene with Lune says it best.
What? No, we have a mission!
Oh, fuck the mission! Fuck the mission, Lune! What are we gonna do, huh? Tell me. What are we gonna do? We're gonna take down the paintress, just the three of us? My gun and your sparks?
I didn't take you for a coward.
I'm not a coward.
You swore the oath. When one falls, we continue.
Yes, I know.
When one falls. When one falls. Not if, when.
Which, as great as the environmental storytelling is alongside these expedition journals, the performance of the characters across the board by the actors is phenomenal. Gustav's range of emotions as he loses the one he loves, to the absolute horror he experiences landing on the continent, to feeling the joy of seeing someone he cares about so much is incredible. Then you have someone like Verso, who over the course of the game, the way he battles with how much he cares about the people around him and hiding the truth of the world around them from them just eats away at him. All the characters are just fantastic in this sense, but then you even got these little attention to details that really scream at you what the truth is, but you don't even realize you're being told what's happening the entire time till it's laid out in front of you, like the vagueness of families constantly being mentioned by Renoir, or how Mael's skills revolves around fire. These details hide the truth right in front of you, and it's so damn cool going back through the game after knowing everything and seeing how the devs approach telling the story in such an obscure way at the start, but yet at the same time shoving the truth right into your face without you even realizing it unless you truly have a sharp mind to decipher what's going on. Which is why I love the story so much. Not to mention, despite how dark the overall tone of the story is, they find so many ways to insert comedy in the perfect spots that doesn't take anything away from it. Even during the most serious moments, I'm looking at you, Minoko and Esuke, which is really hard to do. And don't even get me started on how the music truly sends key moments of the story over the edge. I say this because this is easily one of the greatest soundtracks in gaming. Areas you explore usually have their own or multiple unique songs playing when you're exploring. Instead of having a single battle theme for normal enemies or bosses, there's like 30 different songs used for battles. Not an exact count, but it's a lot. Then how the music complements different story moments is just perfection. Like, let's look at camping. When you're out in the overworld, you can camp out for the night, which is like your main base of operations. You can upgrade your characters, supplies, and engage with party members to get to know them better, which raises your relationship levels with them, that provides benefits like new moves to use in exploration, additional side quests, and new gradient attacks. But even the music used here is phenomenal. Everyone has their own themes, Minoko's being my favorite. But these themes fit each character so well. You can literally feel their personalities in these songs. It just shows how a good soundtrack can truly elevate an experience. Though while I'm on the subject of elevating an experience, one of the things that impressed me was how the game leans into one of the most rough feeling aspects to elevate it into a strength, and that's the movement. The movement doesn't feel great. It has this strange jankiness to it, definitely when you're platforming, but at the same time, they take advantage of that jankiness by providing these gestural challenges where you are tasked with completing obstacle courses or playing an extreme game of volleyball to get prizes, and they're fun and completely optional. Basically, there's no point during the main story where the movement is going to give you issues, but if you want to engage with that janky movement, then the optional areas are a great way to do it, and since there isn't that many of them, it makes doing them not feel like a chore, and the reward's worth the effort, which is what I might love most about the game. Yes, it's a decently long RPG if you decide to do all the content, but that content doesn't feel annoying to do thanks to how focused it is. Nothing really feels like it's placed in the game just to be filler, so it was nice to see a game do that for a change. Too many times do we get this endless repetitive content shoved into games just to pad out the run times, and I really wish more games would approach optional content like Expedition 33 does. Though now I suppose it's about time I talked about performance overall with the game. I pretty much had a flawless experience when playing on my Xbox Series X outside of two areas, the final area of the game and the optional area known as the Endless Tower during the later battles. These two areas would sometimes hit me with these massive frame drops that wouldn't go away unless I restarted the game. Not sure what was causing these, but they definitely affected my ability to play the game. Also, there would be times where random terrain would mess up my character's movement or cause them to stop running and just walk. So hopefully these things get fixed in future updates, and depending on when you watch this videos, these issues could be already fixed. But I thought they were worth mentioning, though let me be super clear. Like I said, my experience was flawless outside of those instances. This game is damn near perfect, so overall, I'm impressed by the quality across the board. The way they approach the various mechanics of the game and how it works in harmony with stuff like the art direction, music, and story is so sick. Like, look at this UI. It's so well designed. This truly is such a special game that honestly once again proves, just like all the games that came before it, that turn-based RPGs are here to stay and that they were honestly never gone to begin with. But with that said, Expedition 33 for me is one of the greatest turn-based RPGs I've played. I loved every second I played this game for, and I cannot recommend this game enough, which it truly will be interesting to see how people look back on this game as time passes, and what kind of influence it may have on those who come after.